My two fastest quads, the LS-210 and the ZMR-250. Man, I never noticed it before, but look how tall they are. If only there was something shorter. Whoa! The GEP-210 with its low-profile sexy frame. This LS-210 has become one of my favorite frames, mostly because of its simplicity and its design of the thick arms. It makes it very difficult to break even in hard crashes. The only downside of this frame that I've come across is that the center of gravity is pretty high on the battery. Even though most of the time it doesn't make much of a difference, the only time I really see it is when I do rolls. You can feel the battery kind of swinging you around more than the quadcopter motors pulling you around. And that's pretty much the only downside to this frame that that I've come across. In fact, I have two quads that are both built on this and a third one in the works. Anyway, this frame tries to solve that problem of having a high battery by lowering the top plate and putting the arms across the top plate as well, and centering the center of gravity a little bit more than the LS-210 does. So, guess what? Today, I have that frame. It's the GEPRC 210. GEP is the name of the company, GEPRC, and they call this the GEP 210. Anyway, we'll open this up and take a look at it. So here are all the components that come inside the bag and the frame itself. And the weird thing is, this is the top plate and the place where the motors mount on. And this is the bottom plate. And these are both carbon fiber, and it has a little GERC engraved in here with a, into the carbon fiber. Kind of cool. Anyway, has these things up here, and these are what go around the camera. And this, I believe, comes up underneath the camera, kind of like this. We'll get it put together. But this one also comes with instructions, because there's a lot of components to this. It has a little LED strip inside here that is designed to go on the back of it. Camera mount, power distribution board, screws and nylon spacers. And then here are the carbon fiber pieces for the top of the camera mount and the side of the quad here. So, oh, and also, this is another cool thing. It comes with a power cord ready to solder on to your power distribution board, which is cool. Also comes with zip ties. I've never seen any frame that comes with this before, which is really cool. It also comes with two battery straps, another thing that I don't see very often. GEPRC battery straps, and they're actually pretty nice. I kind of like them. It's kind of a rubbery material here, so if it holds on, so when you wrap it around your battery, hopefully it will help hold the battery in and keep it from sliding out. It also comes with 3 sets of stickers, the GEPRC stickers on here. So here it is partially assembled, and I'll just save you a lot of headaches if you're building this by yourself for the first time. Now, there are short screws and there are long screws, and the long screws are designed to go into this metal spacer. This metal spacer has a long opening inside for long screws. So since there's 4 of the long screws, you want the spacer with a little screw-on thing here to go from the top to the bottom, and then you screw the opposing, regular spacer down here on the bottom. And you do that for all 4 of these upper pieces up here in the front. And then this is the camera mount that goes here, and this is pretty ingenious because I haven't seen this before. It's I think it's aluminum, it might be steel, but it feels like aluminum, and it has a screw up here in the top that holds the top of the camera in place, and these ones down here are little set screws, so you can loosen them and it will bend the camera mount down or point it up. So you get an angle about like that, or almost straight but not quite straight, a little bit of an angle, up to probably about a 45-degree angle or so, whatever that is. But these metal spacers, though, you need to put the ones with the nub on the top pointing down, and then the long screws will go into here and hold down this top plate. And I think they do that just to give it a little bit more strength, because there's not really a lot up here other than the top plate itself, and it's just a little small one. The mounting holes out here, they allow for a 1806 motor or the 2200 motor out here on the side. And what it looks like you would want to do, or what this is designed to do, is have the wires come out and then run down through this hole here, and then you would have your ESC down here on the bottom. And it's going to have to be a little small one, like an SN20 amp or an RC timer or something. And then it has the zip tie holders here, so that the zip ties, which I would assume are these that are included with it, would go around your ESC and hold it into place. And then your wiring would have to come back and find some way to get into the frame and underneath through these holes or something, or we'll look at that in a minute. But the wires would come back here to your power distribution board or your flight controller for the signal wires, I mean. Now, I have the power distribution board sitting here, but I don't think this is where it's supposed to go, because there's barely any room inside here for you know, to double stack your components in here. So here's the side plate, and I stick it on here, and I think this is where your flight controller is supposed to go, because then this hole in the side plate here gives you easy access into your USB port on your flight board. Like I said, if your ESCs are down here, I don't see where the wires are supposed to run into to go inside the frame here to the power distribution board, and I don't think you're supposed to run them on the side, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of having the side protections. This is the lower plate that goes in the back, or that actually goes on the bottom. And here's the other set of 4 holes. There's 4 holes back here for, I would guess, a power distribution board, and 4 holes up here, which would be for your flight controller. And it lines up like this. So if you had your flight controller back here, you would kind of get some weird characteristic flips and back flips because of the position of it. But if it's up here, it should be okay. But if you have your power distribution board sitting back here on, you know, these 4 rear holes back here, I don't know how these wires are supposed to come from here back to there. I guess you have to put them up on top and run them through this upper hole and then back to the power distribution board. The only problem comes in the wiring. Okay, if you have this assembled like this, and you have your wires in place and your power distribution board in place, I don't know how you're supposed to solder it, because if you open it up like this, now your wires are going to be too long and you can't really solder it with it closed. So maybe, I guess you could mount your power distribution board in here upside down, but you'd have to mount it to this. But you can't, because it looks like this is where your video transmitter is supposed to go, because it has this antenna hole here, and I guess it's supposed to come up through here, and then you have these 2 little zip tie holes to hold the antenna in place, and then these 2 zip tie holes to hold the video transmitter in place. So I am having a little bit of confusion on how this is actually supposed to be assembled. Also, it came with these little tiny small flush mount screws right here, these 2 here, and it had these 2 little brass spacers, and I'm not sure exactly what those are supposed to be for either, but I couldn't find any other place where they're supposed to go. It also has included these 2 other little small screws like this, which again, I'm still confused as to what you're supposed to do with those. These are the LED boards that go on the back of the quadcopter. And if you look, it's actually the smart LEDs. It has a the ground 5 volt and a signal pin. And the signal pin is what allows the NAIS 32 or a CC3D or a F3 racing board to control the different colors on these LEDs. And so you can do things like turn red when it's armed, or turn green when it's disarmed, or stuff like that. Anyway, the cool thing about this is you can see this, or people that are following you can see it in their goggles when they're chasing you. And it's kind of tilted at this angle, so when it sits like this, like I said, it's even more visible to the people behind you. If it were straight, it wouldn't be quite as visible, but being angled, it should be a little bit more visible. So here's the frame fully assembled. It has these landing gear, which are just little nylon spacers with small screws and a little rubber thing holding them on, but they're not in the picture, so that must have been an idea that came after the quad was built. Another thing that was kind of threw me for a while is there's 4 long screws, and then there's a whole bunch of short ones. The 4 long screws ended up going up into these 4 up here on the top. That kind of threw me for a little bit while I was trying to figure it out. But like I said, back here in the back, if you put your flight board right here, your power distribution board is going to have to sit back here on these 4 screws. Now, the only bad thing is they're going to sit right next to each other, so depending on how you have it wired, it might be a little bit interesting getting it all to squeeze in there. But you don't buy one of these kind of frames with a low profile if you're new, because they're just a little bit harder to put together. Okay, I said I didn't know where the ESC wires go, but I do. They go right here in these little holes right here, these little cutaways. So your ESCs would go on the bottom, and they would slide in, the power and signal wires would slide in through here. On the back side, they would slide in right through here through these little cutouts here on the side. So this would actually look very slick. Have your motors up here, wires drop down, ESCs zip tied on the bottom down here, and the power wires and the signal wires running in through the little holes. So that is actually pretty cool. I like the way they thought this out and didn't actually copy this off anybody else. Also, with this cutaway up here, you should have no problem with the angle of your camera sticking up a lot. You shouldn't see too much of the plate. You might see these out here, but it wouldn't be too much invisible inside your goggles. We'll go ahead and get some measurements on how thick these plates are. These upper arms are, or the upper plate here is 3 millimeters. This bottom one looks like it's about maybe 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 on the bottom one. And the amount of space that you actually have in here between the two plates is only 15 millimeters, which is a pretty tight build. If you are doing your first build, you might want to look at something with a little bit more space. But if you're trying to make it look cool, this is a great quadcopter to start with. Up here in the front, between these two upper plates for the camera, you have about 32 millimeters of space, maybe 33, 32.7. Yeah, anyway, you got that much space there for the camera. And this up here between these two screws is about 50 millimeters, and that's between the space there, so you can see if your camera would fit. This doesn't look like it's going to be able to fit a Sony board camera, because it's too big. So it's going to have to be a little CMOS camera or a small CCD camera that would fit in there. So the amount of space they actually have in here for a battery is about 12 centimeters. If that's from right here at the front of my ruler back here to the back, about 12 centimeters of length. On the width side, you got these little pieces here that stick up. So we need to measure this, and it's about 37.5 millimeters wide, and that's between these little bumps here, and they stick up, I would assume, to help hold the battery in place, because there's the two up here in the front, and then there's the two back here toward the rear, and the battery strap to help hold it all down. And if it was me, I'd probably put some Velcro inside here and Velcro on my battery to help also hold it down so it doesn't slide out and I don't have to look for it when I crash. On the picture back here in the back, they have the power wires coming up through this little rectangular hole, and that would be okay, but you probably want to get a little rubber grommet to put inside there, because you don't want your power wires pulling on this carbon fiber, because it's not real smooth there. It's kind of sharp from the cut that they used, but you could do that. Just need to put a grommet in there to help protect the wires a little bit. One other thing about the battery length, if you're going to run your antenna up through this hole, you're only going to have about 10 centimeters of space back to here. Otherwise, it's going to start interfering with your antenna. So measure your batteries, make sure they're going to fit. So here's the frame fully assembled, and if I weigh this, it comes in about 130.8. That's not including this wire, which adds a little bit of weight. It's not including the power cable or the zip ties, which would also add a little bit more weight, and you're about 150 grams more or less on your frame. The frame kit came with some of these little nylon washers, and I'm not really sure what you're supposed to use these for. I couldn't find any place that was really, needed to be separated from the power distribution board, because most of the stuff is metal and it's going to short everything to the to the frame anyway. So I don't know what you would use those for. Maybe there's something, I just don't know. This is a 5-inch propeller, and this frame can easily spin 5-inch propellers. They're not going to hit anything. When you got the motors in here, it'll raise it up a little bit too, and it'll probably raise it up over top of the plate up here. Back here on the back, these kind of come in here, but they don't cross past this little nub here. So if your battery can fit in between there, you should be fine. And even turning like this, it's not even getting near the battery strap, and it's not even near the front one either. So you shouldn't have any problems with it snapping together here in the middle. The 6-inch prop like this one here, there's no way you're not going to run 6-inch props on here unless you maybe flip the frame and fly it upside down or something else, but there's just no way this is going to fit 6-inch props on this frame. So here we'll go ahead and measure how far this distance really is. It says it's a 210, so we'll measure it and see how close they really are. Let me get this lined up near the center. There we go. And up here it comes out to be right at 210. I don't know if you can see that in there, but it comes out to be right at 210. So this surprisingly really is a 210 frame. So here's the GEP-210 sitting next to my LS-210 over here. And I looked at this a little bit ago, and this is a little bit narrower on this frame here, and about just a little bit wider left to right on the GEP-210, and that's probably why they both measure out near 210. But this one's exactly 210, which I'm kind of surprised. Okay, so anyway, the point of having this battery down a little bit lower in the frame and having a low profile is because if you have a frame like this LS-210, your battery sits up here a little higher, and if you do rolls, then the whole quadcopter is going to spin around the heaviest point of the quadcopter, which in this case is the battery up here on the top. Because it sits up so high, the camera is actually going to roll around in a circle, you know, not just spin, it's going to roll around in a circle. Whereas on this one, the center of gravity being a little bit closer, that circle the camera goes through is going to be a lot tighter because it's closer to the center of gravity. And this one here is a Banggood 1500 4S battery, and you can see it fits in between these posts just fine. Like I said, if you're going to try something different, make sure you measure your battery, make sure it fits between those. So anyway, this I like this little camera mount up here. It gives plenty of protection inside to your camera, and I don't think you're going to have any problems, especially if you tighten these screws up with it moving at the flying field or anything. And if you do decide you want to adjust it at the flying field, it's just a couple of screws you loosen, or maybe all 4 of them. Angle it the way you want it, tighten it back up. Somebody will have a Allen wrench at the flying field that you can use if you're at a race or an event. Overall, I really like this frame. There's not a lot to not like about it. If I look at weak points, maybe here and maybe here where these wires would go down through there, but that's pretty thick still, and I think it'll still be okay. Maybe these arms could be a little bit wider, and that'd help give a little bit more protection to a motor that's a little bit fatter. That might be fatter than this arm, but those are kind of picky points. The camera mount in here is awesome for, you know, if you're going to angle your camera and making adjustments at the flying field. The antenna back here is going to fit just fine, even with a 1500 battery such as this one. It's not even shoved up to the front all the way, which I might want to put some padding in there because this is kind of sharp up here. But I also like having the LEDs built in to where, you know, it's ready for your, you know, to be powered on and used. You don't have to figure out some way to mount them yourself. It just comes with the frame. The only things that are going to be kind of weird on this build is, first of all, working with a low profile is going to be a little bit odd just because I'm used to having lots of space, and also having 2 different places to mount your 2 different boards. Your flight board would be up here, your power distribution board would be back here, so your Esc wire is going to come back and pass this, and then soldering it in might be a little bit odd. I guess you could put it in with the solder points up to the top, solder it in, and then attach it to this bottom plate later. I guess I'm not really sure exactly how you'd do it, but like I said, that's one of the challenges of doing low profile, is trying to figure out how to do things differently than you've done before. Anyway, this is the GEP-210. If you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments. I'll try to help you out as best I can. And as always, thanks for watching.